Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Mary, how are you doing today?
Joseph, well, what can I say? I'm here with you, and I'm here with our guest, so I'm doing pretty well today. Thank you for asking, and I hope you are as well.
Thank you, Mary. You did point out you're here with me, and we don't have the full gang here today, but we're going to power on and have a great episode nonetheless. Would you please do the honors of introducing today's guest?
I absolutely will. Thank you so much, Joseph. Our guest today is Barbara Micheletti. She's a 25-year gerontologist. She's not 25 years old, although, maybe, Barbara, you can be. But for 25 years, you've been a gerontologist, a leadership coach, and a former 13-year property and casualty insurance advisor, which, I love hearing that, on a mission to help financial professionals and other seniors-focused industry leaders razor sharp their focus from traditional to holistic longevity planning. Again, this is really the crux of our programming, to better understand kind of how, you can help them and navigate them and prepare them financially and emotionally in advance of the inevitable aging and money issues that we may all experience. Barbara, welcome to the program. Love having you today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and why you do what you do.
Well, first of all, Mary and Joseph, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to talk about actually why I do what I do. And that story starts off with when I was that former property casualty insurance agent, and I was working with one of my clients, and we had a great relationship. He was a great client, and he loved his company very much. And his name was Jerry. And Jerry was a cowboy. I'm here in Arizona. He's a cowboy through and through, the black ostrich cowboy boots and all that. And he built his company from scratch, and he really appreciated his employees because he knew without them he wouldn't have a company. And one day we were in his office and we were reviewing his insurance policies, and then out of the blue, he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "Barb, you're a gerontologist too, right?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I've got my employee, Bob. He's 69 years old. He's been a loyal employee, and I would do anything for him. But he lost his wife this last year," and he said, "He's changed on the job. He's become increasingly forgetful. He repeats himself, and he drove our company truck into a wall for the second time this year." And he said, "I don't know what to do." And as you can imagine, I'm staring back at him thinking, oh my goodness. He had no idea where to go, what to do. So of course I jumped in, put together a game plan for him. And Bob also, it was later revealed, had money issues as well. So at that point, I felt like I could only do so much as that insurance advisor, as that insurance agent. And I wasn't a practicing gerontologist. So fast forward to today, I help train, coach financial professionals, money professionals, to better understand the aging issues that we will most likely experience at some point in our life, and help them better understand how to help their clients navigate through inevitable aging issues and help them prepare financially and emotionally in advance for those issues. And this is where I am today.
That's a interesting story. I hope most people don't have trucks driving into the walls, but I think it highlights an interesting point, which is people are planning to save and planning for retirement, but they're not necessarily prepared for when that inevitably happens. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what professionals, people in their 50s, other money managers should be thinking about as they help their clients navigate retirement and post that moment in time.
Well, and you bring up a really good point, Joseph, is are we prepared? Do we have a plan in place? And are we executing that plan? Here's the thing. We are living in a longevity society. We're living to age 100 really is a new normal. And if geroscience, which is a part of gerontology, which studies the longevity of our lifespan, if they have their way and they find the magic bullet, we could live for, according to some doctors, thousands of years. But we're not quite there yet, but we are living to age 100. And are we financially and emotionally prepared for that? So when we think about retirement and going into pre-retirement, these pre-retirement years, and how can we think about what it looks like going into retirement, we have to factor in our longevity. Are we financially secure to have lifetime income? Is that something that's there? Has that been factored into for our clients? Are the people that are creating these plans? So is there a lifetime income, and transfer that risk of this lifetime income from their portfolio so they can keep their portfolio intact to leave a legacy for their children and grandchildren, but also to transfer it over to the insurance company in the form of maybe an annuity or something like that. So lifetime income, or just some sort of sustained income. You certainly don't want to continue to live and run out of money. So that's one big part. Another part is aging in place. Now, over 90% of people have been polled say they would love to age in place at home. Now, what does that look like? Sure, we could say we would love to age in place at home, but do we have the financial and the emotional and the physical capacity to age in place at home? Are we healthy where we can remain mobile and independent and take care of ourselves? And if not, do we have that help in place, also known as maybe a spouse, maybe your adult children, maybe your neighbors, maybe other family members? Maybe home health care may need to come in. I was reading there's a report that came out that people age 65 and above, over 70% of them are going to need some sort of assistance in the home, whether that's home health care, assistance from a spouse or something like that, or they may need to take it further and require more skilled care, going into maybe a skilled nursing facility or an independent living community or an assisted living. Or unfortunately, which is abnormal aging, a cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, something like that. So certainly thinking about, yes, you want to age in place at home. How does that look like from a physical capacity, from a mobility capacity, from also a social capacity, and then from the financial, can you afford to live at home? So those are just a couple of things that come to my immediate mind when we think about what are some of the things that we want to talk about with as we live older, as we live longer, how can we prepare for that?
Barbara, do you think that people, I love what you just said earlier about people are living to 100 plus. Do you think the people that perhaps you speak to, and I know this is a general question, they're really taking that in that's possible, that I may live to 100, or my spouse or my brother or sister, and what that really means, it's a number, but then what goes with that? Healthcare costs, we could go on and on. So can you talk a little bit about those that may think, wait, I haven't thought about that before, how you broach that conversation with them?
Oh, Mary, that's such a great question. It's we think about things in theory sometimes, right? In abstract. Well, it's easy to think about theory because it's not practical. It's not something that you're executing. It's just out here. When we think about the reality, if we really are going to live that long, we're going to want to put those mechanisms in place. We're going to want to think about, do we have an estate plan? That's one thing I come across all the time. Many people don't have a simple estate plan, a simple will, a simple trust. Powers of attorney, as we know that's so important in the financial community. Is your beneficiary up to date? Do you have a trusted contact? So having just even a simple power of attorney, having that trusted contact, having a will, not going into probate, and if you could extend it even further, do you have your advance directives? Do you have a do not resuscitate? Do you have it's called a POLST in certain states, which is a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. Because when you think about it, we don't have complete control. If we get to a point where we need to go to a hospital, and if we don't directly and specifically tell the hospital what we want to have done, no feeding tubes, no breathing machines, no anything like that, they're going to use their own protocol. And that might go against your faith, your spirituality, your own ethics. It might go against your family's wishes. It might go against something that you're not taking control of. So you're giving that control to somebody else. So when you think about that, if there's anything that I could speak very highly of, is to have that estate plan, talk to your financial advisor, talk to an estate planning attorney, or there's great software out there as well. Have that estate plan, have a plan on top of your financial plan.
If what you just said was a web page, there'd be about 500 links to previous episodes of ours. So we've covered a lot of caregiving topics in great detail, and I encourage our listeners to listen to some of them, because you've touched on at a high level those topics, and then also on the estate plans and wills and estates and so forth as well. But I've read something, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago, about changing your beneficiaries after you have a divorce. Just because you changed it in your will doesn't mean you've changed it across all of your financial holdings. And you may inadvertently be giving money to someone you don't want to give money to if you're not carefully updating all those documents. So making sure you're working with someone who knows all those boxes to check is important, especially if you've had a major life change.
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
Nassau is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Now an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
Like that. So talking about, demographics, if you will, right? Couples and so forth. Could you talk a little bit about, the differences between, that men and women might be experiencing as they go through this retirement process? I know on your website you have some of this information, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how it differs for couples and solo aging folks as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, we could have a whole nother conversation, Joseph, based on that. Excellent question right there. It really does blossom out into so many different ways, but we'll keep it short and tight here. The biggest thing that women have as we age is we live longer. And because we live longer on average, depending on the report you read, 7 to 8 years, I would argue 10 years longer, 20 years longer. It depends, genetics, lifestyle, choices, diet, things like that. It depends on that. But women live longer. So the aging process in and of itself increases the likelihood of us developing a chronic disease. So we all know that we develop something, whether it's a hypoactive thyroid, whether it's diabetes, whether it's whatever. Because women live longer, we develop more chronic diseases. Yay for us. And unfortunately, of the 6 million people living in the United States with Alzheimer's, the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, of those 6 million, almost 3/4 are women. So cognitive impairment is a woman's issue. For men, on the other hand, so we've got that. So for men, on the other hand, men don't live as long. They've had more stressors in their life because of work, because of societal expectations on them, the pressure to be a man and to man up and toxic masculinity and all that. Men have more coronary, heart disease, and they end up having coronaries, the widowmaker. So they end up having those type of issues on top of other health-related issues as well. And then as far as couples go, some of the big things that came out of my research are gray divorce, couples divorcing after so many decades, sometimes of marriage. And this is where the financial advisor just really continues to bring that added on value, right? To understand that some people, as they age, they don't age the same. They diverge, right? They're not converging, they're diverging. And one of the top issues of gray divorce, if you will, is not aging in lockstep. As people age, we grow, we change, we evolve. One of the people in the couple says, well, I want to be super healthy and I want to run ultra marathons and I'm going to watch my diet and everything. And the other one says, I don't care about that. And if we're living to age 100 and you've been married for 30 years to your spouse and you might have another 30 years to go, some people are choosing, I love you, but I want to run my ultra marathons and I want to do that. And so we're seeing an uptick in the gray divorces. So that's just one aspect. Caregiving is another aspect as well. One question I ask my advisor clients all the time is, when you have the conversation with your clients, are you planning, what happens if one of your clients becomes demented? Is the other person going to be the caregiver? What does that look like? How is that financially going to happen? Can they age in place at home? What if it gets to the point where they can't age in place at home, where they can't handle each other, whether it's emotionally, whether it's physically, right? So those are the things that, as we think about as we age, that become really important, especially in our retirement years, when you think your back's against the wall and that you have no choices. When you have your financial advisor who understands these issues, aging issues, and how they can impact a family so significantly, that's just an incredible value add. And it's why I do what I do.
So Barbara, it was funny you were saying that about, gray divorce. And I was like, well, I've been married to my husband for 39 years, believe it or not. And actually we met working out. We used to own a gym many years ago. So that we have in common. But it's interesting because I've thought about that sometimes. Like, it's like you get older, you do certain things. I mean, it's not that all couples have to, if they believe in healthy lifestyles to the degree and exercise and whatnot. So that's more of a comment that I wanted to say because I thought it was kind of interesting.
That's awesome.
As you're working with individuals and couples, is there anything that you have found that has changed in the time that you've been doing this? In other words, like you've got this gerontology background, which, let's be honest, a lot of financial advisors, I'm assuming they may not. So with that, like, is there anything that you have found, any trend that's changed from, 10 years ago, I'm making this up, till now?
Probably the biggest thing, and I will apologize because I didn't explain what a gerontologist is. A gerontologist, we study from a scientific perspective the aging process from a biological, psychological, sociological, cultural, physiological perspective. And there's geriatricians who are medical doctors who study the chronic diseases of an aging body. We study the other aspects of aging. With that being said, some of the biggest changes, what is our longevity? is our longevity. When we think about our longevity, we can think about it in terms of lifespan and health span. Lifespan is, sure, we can live to age 100 if we've got good genetics, we eat fairly well, we watch our diet, and we exercise fairly well, and sometimes we're just plain lucky, right? But health span is the most important of the two between lifespan and health span. Health span are, what are our good years? How many good healthy years do we have? Ultimately, what we'd love to do is we'd love to be healthy, and then fall off a cliff, right? I mean, and not suffer for a year or 2 years or 5 years with cancer or dementia or some other type of chronic disease. And that's called compressed morbidity. So the biggest change is longevity or health span, and the geroscience, which is their scientific study of slowing down, stopping, or reversing the aging process. Now, you guys will know that as anti-aging, and we think of anti-aging like Botox and creams. Oh, it's beyond that. Geroscientists can now modulate lifespan of C. elegans worms. So they can modulate, they've been able to extend the life. They're working on mice right now. They're working on other, not humans to this point, but they're close. And they just keep wrapping the wagons around this longevity. So these are really exciting times that we live in right now. Like 25 years ago, I didn't study geroscience. It didn't exist, guys. It wasn't even there. They didn't even talk about worms or anything back then. Yet here we are today, 25 years later, and we have the opportunity to live in a healthy way, to get beyond the chronic diseases that a lot of us develop as we bake into our older age. If we can get over that hump of chronic diseases, the dementias, the frailty, the sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle mass, and just things like that, cancer. If we can get to the other side of that, then we can live healthy years up to maybe age 140 or 150. So we truly are in fascinating times.
During the show, early in this series, we talked about epigenetics, and it's been on my mind ever since. So the science is there; it's evolving. Just to your point about living long, there was an article this past weekend in the personal journal, "The Secret to Living to 100." It's not just healthy habits. So mass media is already talking about living to 100. So it's a real thing. Just to your point about longevity, I had a friend reach out to me after he saw me post something about one of our episodes. He goes, "You got longevity wrong. It's about living forever." And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. So,
okay.
So I think it's to me, I mean, I'll just share my personal point of view. It's about living your best life for as long as you can live your best life. So let's talk a little bit about, living longer. People are aging faster now in this country. The demographics are changing very quickly. Talk a little bit about the transfer of wealth as it relates to this aging demographic. You work in financial services. We don't have to talk about products, obviously, but what's about to happen and how does that impact people who are planning and people who are sort of spending down?
Just another great question, because in my opinion, financial professionals have so much on their plate, and it's never been more important than ever for people of all ages to work with a financial professional. And here's why. Because we do have that aging society. We're living longer. To age 100 is a new normal. We're living older as well. So we're living longer, we're living older, and we're going to be developing these chronic conditions and everything. So when we think about our aging, what's really interesting here, and globally, we're aging as well. Like, we're not in the United States, we're not isolated aging alone. Japan is number one. They've been at it for 30 years with robotics, with just helping their older adults in their society with their aging issues. We're getting there. We're older. We're not quite there as Japan, Germany, Italy, and such. By the year 2035, to give a perspective, by the year 2035, there's going to be more older people here in the United States than younger people. And so financial insurance professionals have, Monte Carlo all the way to at least age 100, some people even longer than that. So when we think about aging and then the aging demographic, And then we think about the immense amount of wealth. This has been known for a long time, that we've had that the boomer generation is the largest generation, but they've also amassed the greatest amount of wealth. So they hold, of all the top three generations, the top three oldest generations of all 7 generations, hold 27% of all US wealth. It's just over $30 trillion. It's an enormous amount of money. $84 trillion is currently being transferred to future generations for the next 25 years. And about, depending on the report you read, 40 to 47% of that money is being transferred to women. So now women are being represented more than ever, and they want to step up to the table, to the financial planning table more than ever. So when we think about that great wealth transfer, the financial professionals, many people will benefit from working with a financial professional to help them to grow their wealth, to understand their wealth, to help their wealth successfully transfer to future generations. Because as you know, we know the reports are out there. The next generation doesn't necessarily handle that money, the inherited wealth, as well as the their previous generation, and then so forth and so on. And correct me if I'm wrong, is it the third generation that blows it all up out of the water or something like that? So they've got a monumental task ahead of them, but I'm confident that they can step up to the plate. And I'm very confident that AI won't replace that, because you can only take that so far. You need that empathy and you need the compassion, which is what the financial professional can bring to our aging adults.
Oh, I love what you just mentioned, empathy and compassion. My daughter actually happens to be in the trust and estates line of work as a lawyer. And
Okay.
so it's just interesting hearing you talk about that. But I'm fascinated about the gender thing, men versus women, in terms of, do you find, Barbara, that you've seen, I know you've touched upon it a little bit, and I know Joseph kind of, brought you there to a degree, but do you find a difference in terms of women versus men wanting their financial professional to exude more empathy and compassion? Or like, what do you find that you've noted as differences between men and women? I'm just curious about that.
Now an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations on your daughter being in that space. I mean, I love to see more women in the financial industry in some capacity. We need that for sure. When it comes to the empathy and compassion, historically with financial planning, because it's really not that old of a profession when you think about it historically. More men obviously have been in as financial professionals. So when we look at it from the perspective of men took care of as the financial professional, spoke with the husbands who took care of, historically, from a societal perspective, the family dynamic, the family unit. Women have been coming into the workforce now for decades, and making their own financial decisions, which is one of the big reasons women want to go into the workforce, is to have a career and to control their finances. It helps both men and women to have more empathy and to have more compassion. Money is a sensitive subject, right? It touches upon our childhood. It touches upon deep emotions, whatever was conveyed to us as we were growing up. And it's affected by whatever generation we're from. It's affected by our socioeconomic status, our educational status, our culture, spirituality, our peers, just what was going on during that time in society, societal expectations. So there's a lot of different ways that we were affected with our money thoughts. So as we age, So we have our middle age and we're feeling fine. And then as we get a little bit older, well, we might not be feeling so good. We might be having a bad day. Our knees hurt or just something hurts. And, we're not always on our game, so to speak, because something might hurt or something. We do want to demonstrate that empathy and that compassion, whether it is men or women, especially as we age, especially as we get into our elder years. So older adults are age 65 and above, technically. Elderly are considered age 75 and above. So we do want to have that empathy. And I say for both men and women.
While you were talking just now, it reminded me of a stat I heard a while back, and I'm sure it's not going to be the accurate stat, but you'll get the point, that 80% of widows switch financial planners within a year of the passing of their spouse because the planner had the relationship with the male in the house and never really paid attention. So, word of advice to anyone who's in that line of work to pay attention to the whole family. So we're coming up to sort of the end of the interview here, and I want to give Mary the final question. But before handing it over to her, tell us how people can get a hold of you, and if you have any last minute words of advice.
Well, probably the easiest way would be you could connect with me on LinkedIn. Love to connect with people. So my LinkedIn, Barbara Micheletti, you could find me there. I recently aligned with a leadership performing coaching company called Think to Perform. Very excited about that. Our values, our vision, our mission statement, aligning the ideal or ideal to our real. I love everything about them. So you can find me there on that website as well. I know that's in the show notes. Probably the easiest would be through LinkedIn. As far as any last minute, we've really touched upon a lot of different things. So if there are any, if this strikes a chord with somebody that wants to have a further discussion, sometimes it's more meaningful offline, right? Because these can be very sensitive subjects, very delicate, especially if we have some sort of a cognitive issue, or we have, where they don't feel like they are being heard in where they're at in their family dynamic or situation. So I want them to know that they can reach out to me as well.
So Barbara, you've had a very interesting career. You still have an interesting career currently. You could do anything you want. Why do you wake up every day and choose to do what you do? What's your why?
Such a great question. I love to hear people's why stories. My why story is I became a gerontologist because I was affected by a transaction that had happened when I was going through my undergraduate degree. Another story a long time ago, but I saw senior financial fraud back then. I've seen financial fraud with my friends. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen also the power of positive financial planning. I've seen the power that it could transform people. And my thought and my goals, are to align what it means for us to be aging, for me as a gerontologist, to align the financial industry, because their clients, especially in their retirement, are older adults. And if they can better understand and empathize and have compassion and work with and better engage their older clients, they can retain their business. They could retain them. They could retain those baby boomer women who, Joseph, you spoke about, 70 to 80%, depending on which report you read by Schwab or whomever, that the widows leave their advisor because they weren't invited to the financial planning table. So I encourage every woman to participate in their financial planning process, to know what their total net worth is, to have a say at the table, and to have meaningful conversations, and to lean in, to stay leaning in. So I think it's those things, just because I've witnessed it, I've seen it. And when I was an insurance agent, so many of my clients, like Jerry, I just saw the devastating impact of aging issues and money, that I could only take so far with them, and my hands were tied at that point. And so those are the things that inspire me to be this public speaker and talk about these aging issues and the senior financial fraud and mobility and training advisors and other professionals as well that are seniors focused. And I love what I do. And it's because of that. It's because I can help people and help them achieve their goals, help them achieve their dreams, and live a better life, and help the financial professionals as well, as their clients, then I feel like I've done a decent job. And it continues to inspire me.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your insights. Much appreciated. Mary, grateful for your help in coordinating and working together on this podcast. Everyone else, tune in next week, for another edition of the Prime Life podcast. Thanks, you all.
Thank you.